Welcome back to FPL Therapy, the weekly FPL podcast hosted by me, FPL Raptor, where each week we are joined by a different guest. And I'm delighted to say that for Game Week 11, we have a cracking guest for you, Will Thomas. Will is the CEO and founder of Fantasy Football Hub, but also has an incredible rank history himself with 4 top 1K finishes, including 82nd in the world. Will also has a PhD in psychology as well, which makes him the perfect guest for FPL Therapy. Will, how you doing, my friend?
Good, mate. It's so good to be on. I've really been enjoying the podcast and hell of a studio you got here. I got to say, I'm very, very impressed. But yeah, it's great to finally be on.
This is one that I wanted to do because obviously we've both got that background in psychology, but also, I mean, you founded the very website that supplies all of the stats for these videos and podcasts as well. So for all of the stats that we're reeling off today come from Fantasy Football Hub too. So yeah, this is definitely a good collab. We might talk a little bit of psychology today, but maybe I'll have you back at some point as well to a specific psychology podcast as well, because I think that'd be very, very good.
Sounds good. Love all the biases and
Exactly.
all of that stuff. Yeah, very into that.
Absolutely. So before we begin talking like specifically about the Game Week 10 scores, we'll obviously go through each of our teams. So on your screen, you're going to see Will's team from Game Week 10. And for once, we actually have a guest that's done quite well. So you're on 70 points with Mbermo still to play, which is a cracking week. So before we actually go through your team and look at how it performed, can you just give us a bit of context? Because I think it will help with the sort of advice you provide today and the stats that you give us, etc. What sort of management style would you say you have? How do you approach the game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it all, management style depends on what type of person you are and how you like to play the game. And I would never try and copy someone else's management style. I think that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
You've got to know how your own psychology works, basically. And for me, I suppose the big difference from a lot of managers, I pay zero attention to ownership, and I mean that both ways. I will never think my team is too template and then try and go away from the template. I'll never think it's too differential and then go towards the template. All I try and do, which sounds really, really simple, is maximize points. So yeah, I just won't look at whether people in my mini league have certain players or people around my rank have certain players. All I do is try and maximize points, which sounds really simple when you say it. But yeah, that's basically how I like to play.
And in terms of, we often separate managers into eye test or stats. Do you use a bit of both? Is there anything else you use?
Yeah, so I'm far more stats, and I suppose recently because we've, as Fantasy Football Hub, as you know, gone quite into the AI side of things. I really enjoy looking at the AI. I'll often look at it and plan out my moves around it and then completely ignore it. But I really like using AI in the point projection models. So very much stats based, also very much fixture based as well, rather than form. I very much think that, uh, you know, past points are not a great predictor of future points potential. So yeah, very much focus on the fixtures and look for those fixtures which can bring the most points, basically.
Yeah, I mean, someone's in form until they're not, and someone's out
Exactly.
of form until they're not. And we've seen that a lot
Yeah.
recently. Like Solanke will discuss because he's broken my heart this week, but
Yeah.
you would say he was in terrible form, goes and gets a 16 pointer. Haaland scores 10 goals in 5 games, and now he's
Mm.
not in form. So form doesn't
I,
last forever. But yeah, fixtures are normally a good prediction of when form will start and end.
exactly. Solanke's a great point, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I brought Solanke in when everyone else was looking to bring him out.
Yeah.
I saw he's got Crystal Palace away. Okay, Spurs were terrible in that match, but then they've got a run of 3 or 4 great fixtures, and I thought I want Solanke in my team, even though everyone and his dog was saying he's playing absolutely awful. And as a Spurs fan, I could actually see he was playing pretty awful as well. But he's still getting to good positions, and I know Spurs can score a lot of goals, and he's going to be spearheading that attack. So I know that he's going to be a good option, despite him not playing well and not having good form. If that makes sense. So yeah, I took Havertz out, who was actually in pretty good form at the
Yep.
time, and brought Slanky in. So those are the type of moves which I'm pretty comfortable with.
As someone with 4 top 1K finishes, you've clearly done very well in FPL. Do you think like timing is the most important thing in FPL, but sometimes you have to move on a player before they start scoring? If you're just constantly like reactive in FPL, it's not that you won't succeed, but you can't always wait for a player to start scoring goals and then go, right, now I want them, because you've missed those pass points and then everyone's jumping on them. So do you often find yourself quite a lot sometimes moving for a player that maybe the underlying stats support, but aren't necessarily having that output with it?
Yeah, for sure. I'll look a lot more at XG rather than goals and look for those underlying data that predict future goals, future points potential. Those, I guess, going back to the Solanke stuff, he didn't have terrible underlying data, but it wasn't fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. So
Yeah.
it's not all about the data. It's. I suppose I lean a lot on the fixtures, I would say.
Yeah. And I think that's a misconception with people. Like, I'd call myself a data-driven manager. It's not over-reliance on data. It's not saying data is all singing, all dancing, it's perfect. I mean, even you're saying you sometimes follow the AI and sometimes completely reject it. And I think that's the key thing in FPL, whether you're eye test, data, AI fixtures, don't over-rely on one tool. It's called the law of instrument bias in psychology, but you don't just want to use one tool to help you make your decisions. So cool. Gives us a bit of an insight into the way that you make your FPL decisions. So yes, 70 points in Game Week 10. So I'll read out your team for those on audio. So Sells in goal, who just continues to look brilliant. We'll discuss Forest today. The back line was actually the most disappointing part and a lot of money invested there. So Lewis, 1 pointer, he obviously was benched. Gabriel conceded. Arsenal continuing to struggle a little bit. Trent Alexander-Arnold, 2 points. As much as he has scored a lot of points this season, still been a bit of a letdown in certain fixtures. Midfield, lots of points though. So Salah captain. We'll discuss that in a second. So that was obviously a great decision. Palmer looks like he might be getting a bonus point despite doing absolutely
I have no idea how he's
game.
managed that, but I'll take every point I can get.
We got a Rodgers 9-pointer as well. Again, just a tapping. Quite lucky to get the goal, but he did perform quite well. And then Mbeumo yet to play. We're recording this on Monday afternoon, so we've not seen the Brentford-Fulham game. And then the front line is just brilliant. Chris Wood with a 7-pointer, Cunha with a 6-pointer, and Solanke with the 16-pointer. Now, you look at that team and go, wow, 70 points. For those on audio, you've not seen the bench yet. And the bench is a 15-pointer from Olarena in sub number 1 and a 10-pointer from Semenyo sub number 2. So if Mbeumo was to somehow miss out tonight, I guess you wouldn't mind too much.
I wouldn't mind that too much. No, it's one of those where Aina was in my team like the whole week, and I was flicking between him, Lewis, and Gabriel, and I was sort of hoping Gabriel wouldn't start to just make that decision easy for me. And I was also flicking between Rodgers and Semenyo. Obviously, there was only 1 point difference between those two in the end. But yeah, it was just, I was pretty gutted to see that 15-pointer and the Semenyo 10-pointer on my bench. But look, I can't complain too much with 70 points. It's definitely one of the best game weeks. I think probably the best game I've had this season, actually. So yeah, very happy. Did Salah and Cunha in for Haaland and Eze. So yeah, pretty happy with that move as well.
Oh, wow, that's a brilliant set of moves. And was you kind of happy that you had the excuse to get rid of Eze if you had Eze for a while?
Yeah. Do you know what? He's a player which I wasn't looking to get rid of. He had good data. Palace had decent fixtures. He's on all set pieces. His stats were great. But obviously, he got injured and I could get Salah in. So it sort of made my mind up for me.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So 70 points. I've actually had a cracking week, but now looking at yours, it doesn't feel so good. But I'm on 53 points, and it was a green arrow as well. So I'm up to about 1.4 million. Will's up to about 1.1 million as well. So neither of us have had great starts to the season, but hopefully clawing it back now. So my team was Fabianski in goal with Sanchez on the bench. So I actually sold Raya this week, which paid off because it freed up the funds to make other moves. My defense was Gabriel, Nuri, and the star of the show, my absolute goat in FPL, Leif Davis. I've been talking about him every single game week since Game Week 1, saying how amazing he is, and he continues to really fail to deliver in FPL because Ipswich concede so many goals. But he gets a goal. By the way, if you've not seen Leif Davis's goal, please go watch it. Brilliant volley. He created a big chance as well. He just had a great performance, but he gets me a 10-pointer. Ipswich should have conceded multiple times that game, but it was the fact that in the 94th minute, he still had the clean sheet. I wish I could have got the 15, but I'm not going to complain. Captaincy was on Mo Salah. I did bring him in this week. Cole Palmer with, again, the 3-pointer. Rodgers with 9. So we've got exactly the same midfield. I still have Mbeumo to play. My front line, Haaland with 2, Cunha with 6, and Raul Jimenez, who I brought in this week. So again, we don't know. I'm hoping he starts and does something, but at the time of you watching this or listening, you'll know exactly how well he does. So what transfers did I make? I sold Raya, Foden, and Solanke. The pain. So I sold those 3, but I brought in Raul, who we've not yet seen, Salah to captain him, and then Sanchez on the bench, who has great fixtures from 12 and beyond. It has paid off, really, because I've captained Salah instead of Haaland. So immediately I've gained the points there, but I've lost the 16. So I could do with Raul doing something tonight. I'm annoyed, though, because I had the ability to do what you did, basically, which is sell Haaland and buy Salah. But I looked at it and thought, I can keep Palmer and Haaland and buy Salah. And I felt like if I've got a route to Salah without having to lose Palmer or Haaland, I should take that. And it involved selling Foden, who hasn't looked very good, and Solanke, who has been really disappointing. So it felt like a no-brainer, but it's one of those that just looks like it's backfired slightly.
No, I don't. I mean, obviously, selling Solanke doesn't look great this week, but I really like your team, like your setup. Haaland, Salah, and Palmer. If I could got to have that with keeping sort of a semi decent balance to my team, I would have gone for it. And I think you've managed it. And look, Haaland, I think he's going to see a lot of transfers out this game week.
I quite like that though.
Yeah, and you look at his last two game weeks again. The data, fantastic. He's had some big chances. I think as a Haaland non-owner, we got pretty lucky last game week, and I know you triple captain him the game week before as
Yeah.
well. You got pretty unlucky with that. So yeah, he's just Haaland. You don't need to say too much about him, do you? But he's at the one of the best pick in the game, really. So to have him in your side with Salah and Palmer, I think you're in a great position.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good game week, but it was the first game week of the season. I didn't feel any stress about players that I didn't own. I feel like once you have Salah, Haaland, Palmer, I mean, Saka would be great to have, and there are always players that I didn't want Solanke to do well, but I just felt this peace, which was for the first time this season, because I've always owned Salah or Haaland, and I've been scared of the other one. So at least from like the mental side of things as well, I enjoyed the weekend a lot more. Cool. Right. So let's go through the games one by one from game week 10. So if you are new to FPL Therapy, firstly, please do consider subscribing and liking on YouTube, but also rating 5-star on audio. We basically go through the games one by one from the previous game week and just talk about some of the stuff that we've seen, whether that be eye test, statistics, and some of the players that we might be looking at moving forward. So the first game of the game week was Newcastle 1, Arsenal 0. Did you manage to catch any of this, and kind of what did you make of the game?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty even game, probably about a fair result. I thought Isak's an interesting one. That's the obviously with his headers and that cross from Gordon. Oh my god,
That was a peach.
It's like going back to the 1990s again with Shearer on the end of it, wasn't it? It was absolutely outrageous cross and great header. And those two, I think, are those are the two to watch, aren't they? Interestingly, we've got an AI team of Fantasy Football Hub, and it picked out Isak a few weeks ago, and I was thinking, what?
Yeah.
That just looks like an odd pick. But now you look at it and you think, yeah, okay, Newcastle beginning to pick up a bit of form. He's obviously on pens, spearheading that attack. He's got decent numbers. He looks like a really good pick again. So I think that's the main thing that I took from the game. Obviously, another Arsenal losing their clean sheet. With Gabriel as an owner, it's a little bit worrying, but I'm not too worried, to be honest. It's Arsenal. They're probably one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best defense. So yeah, I think those are the main takeaways. The other one was actually Lewis Hall.
Yeah.
He's been looking really, really good, and his numbers are very, very strong as well. So he's top for expected assists among all defenders over the last 3 game weeks, and only 4.3. So that's he's got to be a serious option. Newcastle fixtures are a bit mixed, but yeah, if you're looking for a cheap defender, he's definitely one to watch out for.
Yeah, we're going to discuss the cheap forwards a lot today, but cheap defenders are starting to creep into our thinking a little bit. And if you're sat there with Trent and Gabriel and even Gvardiol, who's been brilliant, but you're thinking, I'd like to get Salah, Palmer, Haaland, Saka, all of these great players, even Isak, Solanke, Watkins, whoever you want, they're all very expensive. The likes of a Lewis Hall could come into our thinking. We're going to discuss baseline bonus a lot today because I'm starting to use it more in my thinking. Baker last week was very good for talking us through the bonus point system. Lewis Hall is actually 3rd out of all defenders for baseline bonus this season. And if you're wondering what baseline bonus is, it's essentially the bonus points that a player accumulates in the system before those decisive actions like clean sheets, assists, and goals. So it's the level of chance they have, I suppose, of picking up bonus points if they get one of those decisive actions like a clean sheet, goal, or assist. So with Lewis Hall being very, very high for baseline bonus, it means that if he does get that clean sheet or the assist, which he's threatening to do quite often, he's probably going to be pretty good for bonus points as well. And I think we've seen that this week again. I think he's on 2 bonus points this week. So yeah, I really like the idea of Lewis Hall. And it was a very strong performance from Newcastle. Just to confirm those numbers you were talking about, 0.883 XG per 90 for Isak over the last 3 weeks is incredibly good. He's had 12 shots, 5 of which have been big chances. So we're not just talking about just taking shots from all over the gaff. We're talking about a player that is getting those clear-cut chances. And even at the start of the season, we didn't really see this, but I feel like Newcastle are starting to click a little bit more. There was obviously that threat of Howe leaving to take the England job. That's now gone. And I wonder if that certainty now of Howe knowing that chance of England for now isn't there, maybe that's allowed him to just settle down a bit. But Newcastle's fixtures coming up are Forest, which isn't brilliant for the attackers, but Forest, West Ham, Palace, Liverpool, Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich. If you take that as an entirety over the next 7 or 8 weeks, I could
Pretty
see us,
solid, isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. I could
Yeah.
see us wanting them. I suppose the issue is they're very tricky price points, aren't they? Like Gordon, for most people, they've got 2 premiums and Burmo and then a couple of cheapies. Working out where Gordon goes in is very tricky.
What do you make of him playing down the right? Obviously, he put that peach of a cross in, but it does have me a little bit worried from a FPL point of view.
Yeah, it's one of those, the sort of superficial analysis would be maybe more creativity, less goal threat, because he's not cutting on his right. But he's just so critical to that team. He could play left, right. He'll get chances and he'll create them. I do think that of the two, Isak's the one for me. Like, as data-driven managers, you can't ignore the data and the penalties as well. We assume he'll take them back off of Gordon now after he missed that pen, but I think Isak's the one. But again, you've got Jackson. Solanke's just done very well. And then all of those cheap forwards, where does Isak fit into that? It would have to be no Haaland. And then you maybe go for 2 sort of mid-priced forward plus a cheapie. Because I feel like if you've got Haaland plus a cheap one, then you've got the choice of going for a Jackson. But also, in my structure, I don't have that price point in my team. Like, it's 2 cheap forwards, Cunha and Raul Jimenez plus a Haaland. So if Isak continues to look good, if Watkins continues to return, if Jackson looks great, it will just further cement the idea, I think, of selling Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I think there are just so many good options in the forwards bracket, as you say, that are just basically half or less than Haaland's price. So it does make selling him and sort of loading up on the midfield a pretty viable strategy, which is obviously where I've gone. But equally, it's Erling Haaland, and yeah, it's a big risk to go without him for sure.
Yeah, just on Arsenal as well, we said they're struggling. Defensively this season, they're 5th for expected goals conceded. So they've been a lot weaker, but they've not been terrible. I'm not overly stressed about the Arsenal defence. If you've got 2, I wouldn't feel great, but I would feel fine holding an Arsenal defender. The attack is the thing I'm worried about. Over the last 3 games, and do bear in mind one of those was against Bournemouth where Saliba was sent off, they have the lowest XG of any team, lower than Southampton, Ipswich,
That's
anyone.
a great stat.
And over the past 3 game weeks as well, they've had the fewest shots in total as well.
They seem to be missing Odegaard, like,
massively.
And way more than I thought, to be honest.
And we said that Saka might start to take that creative reign, and he did, and he has been, but there's only so much the man can do. And there's no one else in that team that creates. Havertz is a great goal scorer. Trossard and Martinelli are really underperforming. Declan Rice, I think, has struggled a little bit in terms of he's not a 6, he's not an 8, he's playing multiple roles in that midfield. Marino looks good, but I don't know that he's a creator. I like the creativity that they're lacking is so clear that if Saka wants to get in more advanced positions and score goals, and he's not doing as much of the creating, then who is creating for Saka? Yeah. I just think they're finding it very, very difficult. And I mean, they spoke about this on Sky Sports a lot, but Odegaard is one of those irreplaceable players. Like at Man City, De Bruyne does seem that way, but there are various players that can do his role. They've got no one that can do Odegaard's role at Arsenal.
Yeah, no, I think they massively missed that. And also, Havertz is a great player. Like, he was in my team early in the season, but I do just wonder if they do miss that sort of, like, Isak. Imagine Isak at Arsenal. I think that would just sort of transform that team. And I'm surprised they aren't in for someone like that, because Havertz is obviously a great player, but he's not, for me, he's not sort of a number 9. And I think that does hinder them in some ways in terms of like the creative flow of things. But look, it's Arsenal, and I still think that they're going to be the top 3 teams come the end of the season, and they are going to turn it around. So I certainly wouldn't be worried if I had Saka. In fact, Saka in a few games looking to transfer in. Probably Odegaard's going to be back soon in that team and get things ticking again. But those numbers that you've just read out are a little bit concerning. But again, defense certainly wouldn't worry. If I have got Arsenal defender, I'm not at all sort of thinking about getting rid of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think for now, let's see over the next couple of weeks, if Odegaard doesn't come back and Arsenal continue to struggle, then maybe. Because right now I've got Palmer, Haaland, Salah. I'm not too stressed about not having Saka. But if I had him, definitely wouldn't be selling Saka at any time soon. Cool, next game. Arguably the shock of the week, but even maybe more than the Newcastle game was City. So, I mean, Arsenal and City losing in a single weekend, I don't think anyone would have necessarily called that. Man City did struggle in this game, but what an incredible performance from Bournemouth. It was one of those where you don't want to discredit Bournemouth by saying City were poor, when Bournemouth were just very, very good from the first second. The way they pressed City, even more than they normally press, it was like they just had this game plan of, do you know what, we're going to go for this.
Yeah.
And I feel like they noticed that City have been struggling in recent weeks. They saw Kyle Walker as a real weakness, and he has been, and we'll discuss that in a second, because I have no idea how he keeps starting when he's fit, but Kyle Walker was a real letdown for them. Semenyo ran the show for me. Like if there was one player, like we're going to keep talking about data, but let's say for now, ignore data. Semenyo passed the eye test and then some. It's one of his best performances of the season for me. Just ran the show from that left-hand side. And Bournemouth have a really nice run of fixtures now. So they've got Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, Spurs, Ipswich, West Ham. A lot of those defences are in the bottom half of the table for expected goals conceded. So Brentford really poor on the data. Wolves quite poor. Ipswich are the worst defence in the league for data. And West Ham are currently 17th or 18th. So in terms of their attacking fixtures, it doesn't get much better. You have Semenyo, don't you?
I do,
I
yeah.
bet you're glad you held on
On
to
my
him.
bench.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty obviously really happy to have him. He's one of those players that just sort of shoots whenever he gets the opportunity, which
Yeah.
as an FPL manager, you sort of absolutely love. And he could have had a couple against
Oh, really?
City.
Yeah.
He's looked absolutely electric. And yeah, as you said, they really came at City early doors, didn't they? They almost thought, let's put City under as much pressure early on as possible, get under their skin. And it really worked. And it was really impressive display. And as you said, Carl Walker, I don't know what's happened to him. He seems to have not just lost a yard of pace. It seems to be like a couple of yards of pace and just
He's not,
positioning.
yeah.
Like he's gone from like a world-class defender last season to I don't know what's happened to him this season. But it's quite surprising. And I as you say, I'm surprised to keep playing him.
I think when you are someone that relies on pace, you have to realize that your career comes to a very quick end when you lose that pace. And I do wonder whether this will be his last season. Well, it probably will be his last season at City, you'd imagine. The only other player for Bournemouth I wanted to discuss was actually Kirkes. Massive knee jerk, but I like him a lot.
No.
He's 4.4 million. I didn't realize he'd started every game this season as well, because there were some doubts at the start as to whether he would start every game. So if you are looking for a cheap defender, we spoke about Lewis Hall at 4.3. Kirkes at 4.4. If you can't stretch up to the likes of Ryan Aït-Nouri, who's obviously a fantastic asset, I do wonder whether he could be one of the better assets. They're sitting around 9th for expected goals conceded, Bournemouth, so not a perfect defence, but you see here, they've conceded 1 goal to City. They kept a clean sheet against Arsenal, I know against obviously 10 men, but I kind of like the idea of Kirkes, obviously getting 2 assists in this game as well. Do you like
Yeah,
would you
no,
go for Lewis Hall, Kirkes? Who do you prefer, do you think?
I really like Kirkes. I think on balance, I'd probably still go Hall, just because of those underlying baseline bonus and he's as much of an assist threat as Kirkes, if not more. But Kirkes is a great shout. I think if I was wildcarding now, he's a good chance he would find a way into the team. But yeah, of the two, probably edge to Hall. But yeah, Bournemouth, they've got those numbers, having played some really difficult teams as well. As you said, that those fixtures ease up for them now.
Yep.
So you got to think that they're going to push on from here.
Just a very well-coached team by Areola. Like, they're a team that you don't ever expect to get absolutely battered in any given game. And that will happen, of course, at points. But yeah, you're looking at, I think they will have a good few clean sheets over that spell. So moving on to City, we spoke about Haaland at the start, so I'll just rattle off some stats for you around that. So Erling Haaland had 5 shots in the box, 2 big chances, and 1.04 XG. So even if you just take it at face value, 1 expected goal, he really should have scored. In the last 2 game weeks, he's had 13 shots in the box and 6 big chances. So to put into context how many that is, the player in second place for shots in the box is Garnacho with 6. So he's 7 more shots in the box than any other player in the league. And the player in second place for big chances is Isak with 4. So he's had 2 more big chances than the next player and then 7 more shots in the box. So people keep saying that this is what happens when Rodri's not in the team and KDB's not in the team. There's no issue with actually getting him the chances. So KDB being there isn't, for me, going to make Haaland suddenly that much better. The issue is that he is not finishing them. And so whether this be form or whether this be a psychological thing or just variance, you can call it lots of different things. The issue for me right now isn't the absence of KDB. It's something going on with Haaland that he's not finishing those chances.
Yeah, I mean, look, players go through these patches. And I've got, no doubt that he'll turn it around probably very, very soon and score a hat-trick at some point in the not too distant future. I think of all those things you said, is it form? Is it luck? Is it variant? It's more variance than luck. It is just one of those things, if you flip a coin enough times, you're going to get sort of 10 tails in a row. And that's sort of what he's getting at the moment on the wrong side of that sort of variance. He got the right side of it on earlier in the season when he scored, those hat tricks and stuff. But at the moment, he's on the wrong side of it. But yeah, I got no doubt that he's going to turn it around. It's just whether, I suppose the question is whether even when he does turn it around, is he still providing value? And the way that I looked at it was that I didn't see him as the most obvious captain choice over the next 5 game weeks. So for that reason, I thought there was an opportunity to get rid of him. But he'll come back into my side sooner or later, I'm sure.
I think the captaincy point is massive with Haaland. I looked over the next 9 game weeks. I don't think he's the best captain in any of them. There's 2 where you could argue he is, but even in those 2, you've got Salah with great fixtures. So if you're not captaining a 15.3 million asset now for 9 weeks, he's not good value in any world. Even if he was the best captain in 3 or 4 of them, you're still thinking I should want to captain him every week. So I'll ask you the question, because lots of people will be feeling this right now. If people have the free transfers to pivot from Haaland to Salah this week, would you still do it this week, given that obviously Salah's got Aston Villa, then Southampton, Haaland's got Brighton, and then Spurs? Is it still a switch that you would make this week for free?
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Obviously, without knowing the other players in and out.
I think, I mean, the reason I made it last week is because I didn't want this decision this week, because I knew it was either last week or I probably wouldn't have done it. But on balance, I think, you mentioned that not considering other players, but you do have to kind of consider that. I think there are so many good replacements for Haaland that are just so much cheaper. Like you look at the likes of Cunha, and you just think, he's obviously not going to match Haaland, but he'll do a decent job. And then you combine that with the fact that some of, you might have a Foden potentially that isn't firing in midfield, and, you can upgrade him to Salah. Like it very much depends on who you've got on your team. And I hate that answer.
No, yeah.
But that unfortunately is the reality. But if I was to be sort of put on the spot, I probably would be inclined to do that, just because of the value that it can free up there. But if you can be like you and get all of them in, then that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, so I've just gone onto the Fantasy Football Hub My Team feature to look at like each game week. So this game week, obviously, you captain Salah happily against Villa at home. It's not a terrible fixture. I think maybe Haaland is marginally better. Fantasy Football Hub have Salah as coming out just on top on the points projections. If I then go to game week 12, I'd happily captain Salah against Southampton or Palmer against Leicester rather than Haaland. In 13, I think I'd captain Palmer against Villa at home or Mbeumo against Leicester at home, because obviously Haaland plays against Liverpool. Then in game week 14, I'm happy captaining Palmer against Southampton away rather than Haaland against Forest at home. And it just goes on from there. Even in 15, right? You say he's got Crystal Palace away. It's a great fixture. Salah's got Everton away. Happy captaining him there. 16, he's got Man United. You might see that as a great fixture. I would very happily captain Salah against Fulham at home. It goes on like that until, honestly, around game week 2021, where you actually start looking and thinking, I probably want him back in. And even if Haaland is the standout captain in 1 or 2 of those weeks for you, that's still probably not enough. So I'm just going to go out there and say it. I would be happy still selling Haaland for Salah. I said it last week, but it is one of those where we saw with Solanke this week, decisions can backfire. If you tell me that Haaland goes out and gets a hat-trick against Brighton, am I surprised? Not even remotely surprised. And if Salah was to only get a single assist against Villa, the data kind of suggests that wouldn't be that surprising. So make it confidently. But the 2 things that I would be, just to clarify what Will's saying as well, it would be the players going in and out. Like if you're buying Cunha as well as part of that, great. But also captaincy. Like go through week by week and just work out who you want to captain. And if Haaland isn't the captain in a lot of those weeks, I'd sell him.
I think the one caveat to that is that, well, firstly, the next match against Brighton don't know how to like sit back and defend. They're going to go for City. You've got to expect there's going to be a lot of goals in that game.
Yep.
And then it's Spurs. And the thing with Spurs is that obviously they play in sort of a similar way to Brighton. Very, very high line. No Van de Ven. Possibly no Romero as well.
Yep.
That for me, even as a Spurs fan, it's kind of painful to say. We tend to do pretty well against City, right? But, if we're going to be playing Dragusin and, I don't know, Davies as our centre-backs, playing a really high line against Erling Haaland, that's a little bit worrying. So I would be tempted to do it now, but also I think that possibly in game week 13, when City, who do they play there?
Play against each other, I believe.
Yes.
So you can make it maybe after that week or for that week.
Yeah, so it's tough, isn't it? I guess I would be tempted to hang on to him for a couple more weeks, but again, it's totally dependent on your team, who you got in, who you can transfer in and out. But it just for these next 2, it's a bit scary as a non-Haaland owner for the first time going without him.
That is what I would say as well. I've not owned Salah and not owned Haaland at various points this season. I can categorically promise you it's much scarier going without Haaland. Going without Salah is not that bad. Like Salah's brilliant, but the fear going without Haaland, it honestly, I didn't enjoy my weekend watching football having no Haaland. So if the enjoyment factor is important for you, I would hesitate before selling him because it is really, really scary, especially when he starts scoring early. If he gets a goal in like the 5th minute, you're like, I'm in huge trouble here because he often follows that up. The only other quick discussion I want to have in that game was around Gvardiol and Lewis. So Gvardiol just continues to look brilliant. He scored his 3rd goal of the season. He's now had the most touches of any defender in the Premier League this season in the opponent's box with 35. He's also got the highest baseline bonus in the Premier League for all defenders at 14.67. Next best is Romero and then Lewis Hall with 13.95 and 13.84. So he's really good for baseline bonus. Most good defenders average around 10. So Saliba, Robinson, etc. around 10. Rico Lewis himself at 9.63. So Gvardiol being relatively nailed, good chance for clean sheet, great attacking threat, and good for baseline bonus. He's going to regularly, if he gets clean sheets, get 8 or 9 bonus points. He might be the best premium defender for me. And I just think he is much better than Rico Lewis. Now, we spoke about the fact that because Walker was so bad, I think Rico Lewis does come straight back in. So if it's minutes you're worried about, I actually think Lewis's minutes will be pretty good coming up. I'm not too stressed about him missing too many games. I reckon he'll start 6 to 7 of the next 8 games, which might be enough at his price. But if you were giving me a fresh team now that I was wildcarding, Lewis wouldn't be anywhere near it. And I would be trying to get my best to get probably Gvardiol in. Is that how you feel about it?
Yeah, I think so. So I started the season with Gvardiol and no Arsenal defenders, and then switched that around for my wild card and brought Rico Lewis in. So I've really messed up there. Basically, I've got the wrong end of both sides. I mean, obviously Gvardiol, incredible footballer, incredible FPL asset. You know, he's all over the box. I think when he gets an opportunity, unlike most defenders, you actually back him to put it away. I mean, what a header as well. He's just a fantastic footballer. And as you say, great on the bonus. My one hesitation is that looking at City's upcoming fixtures from a defensive point of view, I mean, obviously they're City, they can get clean sheets against anyone, but there is, I suppose while I'm not rushing to get him, it's for that reason. Because, you look at Brighton, Spurs, Liverpool in the next 3. There's probably the 3 best attacks in the league at the moment. So, I don't think that City don't look good defensively either. They can definitely concede, and they have been conceding, and they just look a little bit leggy in general. So I think that they are likely to concede over the next 3, but equally, Gvardiol could well score again and get assists. So he's always going to be a good pick. So I definitely wouldn't put people off getting him.
Yeah, I think I'd be happy to hold on to either. Gvardiol in particular. Maybe I wouldn't rush out to buy either of them at the moment. If you did have the money in the free transfers to pivot from Lewis to Gvardiol, in the long term, I see very little chance of that backfiring over a large number of game weeks. Gvardiol just looks like the better asset. Cool, next game, not much to talk about in terms of FPL, so we'll fly through. It's just Ipswich 1, Leicester 1, the Leif Davis show. Yeah. I'm just, again, buzzing with the performance from him. But Ipswich in general, Leicester accumulated 1.96 XG in this game. So Ipswich really should have conceded a lot earlier, and they are the weakest defense in the league. I got this really wrong at the start of the season. I thought they would be the strongest of the 3 promoted teams. They look the weakest. They've actually conceded 45 big chances in 10 game weeks, which is horrendous. Like the next highest after that is Leicester with 39. So they really are just shipping chances every week. And we'll talk about Southampton a bit because they've looked a little bit better. But yeah, Leicester and Ipswich, both teams, you really target those fixtures. Spurs obviously playing Ipswich this week, United playing against Leicester. So if you own attackers from those teams, it looks great. I really see no one I wanted to invest in. Vardy does continue to tick along, but I think I'd rather go for like a Strand Larsen at the moment. Buonanotte could offer good value at that cheap price, but I'd prefer Rodgers. And then Leif Davis is really attacking, but I can't advise bringing him in because he's never going to get, unless he is scoring. I remember 2 weeks ago, he got me an assist and got 2 points because he conceded 4 goals, got booked. He come away with 2 points with an assist. So is there anyone from Ipswich or Leicester you'd want to invest in?
No. Okay. Keep this section fairly short, but yeah, I don't even look at teams like, maybe it's a bit of a bias, but yeah, it's just not, I would never consider buying a player from either of those teams. And if anything, the reason you want to look at them is just to target them, as you said, for upcoming captaincies and fixture swings and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I think with Davies, obviously I think he's a great footballer. He strikes a brilliant ball, but you'd almost prefer him in midfield, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because they're just going to concede so many goals, and I just can't see them keeping a clean sheet anytime soon.
Yeah, like if he was listed as a midfielder, he's one of the rare ones that would actually probably pick up more points because he doesn't lose the bonus. Yeah, so yeah, basically no one from that game, but I would just say definitely target those two as fixtures moving forward. Liverpool 2, Brighton 1. It looked like Liverpool, City and Arsenal were all going to lose points here, but Liverpool, so this was the tweet that I put out after. Liverpool concede and go 1-0 down. Liverpool don't do anything until 70 to 80 minutes. Liverpool decide to turn it on and score a couple of goals with a Salah return. Liverpool win, Salah 9 to 10 pointer, rinse and repeat. It's the same every week. I've owned Liverpool assets pretty much every game week for now, like 2 or 3 years. I normally have 2 or 3. And they are so bad in the first half. Under Klopp or Slot, they just don't do anything. They go 1-0 down, and I'm like, why did I invest in Liverpool assets? And then they just suddenly, in the final moments of the game, they just come alive. And Salah is just getting so many bonus points at the moment. I actually look, so in the entirety of last season, Salah accumulated 24 bonus points in the entirety of the 23-24 season. This season, he's already on 18 in 10 game weeks. So he only needs 6 more bonus points in 28 game weeks now in order to match what he did last season. It's the creativity, it's the extra bonus you get for shots on target and fouls won. So Salah's goal now every single week is giving him a 9 or 10 pointer. Plus, he's got more creativity than Haaland. And this is the thing, Haaland, he's got no creativity. So if he scores, it's a 9 pointer. If he braces, it's a 13. Salah can get a goal and an assist and come away with sort of 14, 15 points because of the clean sheet point, of the extra point for a goal and the bonus points. And at his price, he just feels like ridiculous value.
Yeah, you can't argue with it. I mean, he does look a bit on the periphery sometimes.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything.
He doesn't do anything. Like, and you're thinking, why have I got this guy captain?
Yeah.
And then, but you kind of always know in the back of your mind that he can turn it on at any point. And when he was running down the wing against Estupinian, you could just see him cutting inside and scoring. Like you just almost knew it before it was going to happen. God knows, what Estupinian was doing. I mean, he's probably knackered, to be honest. But you just know that Salah in that position is going to find the back of the net, don't you? And as you say, more creative, great for the bonus, and on pens, he's a great pick at the moment. I think the one player that's certainly in my team, which I'm questioning at the moment, is Trent. I mean, he didn't look as creative as he usually does. And that seems to be a bit of a trend. It's not just the one game. It seems to be a little bit of a trend. And not so relevant from an FPL point of view, but just his positioning, what was going on for so much of that first half, especially. You think that could he even lose his place? Bradley waiting there. I mean, Bradley's also quite an attacking player, so maybe they look at Gomez, but he's not playing well at the moment.
No, he said a couple of weeks ago he was managing a muscle issue since the start of the season. And I wonder if we've seen it with Reece James since coming back, and we'll discuss Reece James in a bit, but he's playing a more reserved defensive role. I wonder whether because he is managing this muscle issue, and I want to say it's not an injury, it's just a recurring little niggle that he's got, but I wonder if that's just forcing him to just play a slightly more reserved role, or is it just Arne Slot saying, this is what I expect from you in our system? You can't maraud forward as much as you want. But Tsimikas was great. Tsimikas created 2 big chances. Trent only created the 1 big chance. If Tsimikas continues to start ahead of Robertson, brilliant, but it's just probably not worth the risk.
It's not worth the risk, is it?
Konate went off with what looked like a serious wrist injury. He did post on social media, though, saying that it's not fractured or broken and that he'll be available for the next game. So if you take that at face value, then Konate continues to probably offer the best value in that Liverpool defence. On Brighton, Welbeck with another attacking return. After the City game in Game Week 11, they've got Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Palace, West Ham, Brentford. I struggle to see a better run of games there. Again, if we're looking at in terms of XGC in the table, Bournemouth about mid-table, Southampton right down the bottom. Fulham's not an easy fixture, but then Leicester, Palace, West Ham, Brentford, those are 4 defences you're expecting goals. My only concern with Welbeck would be once everyone's back fit, because João Pedro's very close. They've got Ruta, Ferguson's now back fit, Matoma, March once he's back, Minter. They've got all of these players that can all play various positions. Welbeck's been so nailed, but they've not had everyone back fit. So I do just wonder, going into December, at his age, does he get the odd rest? It's difficult to rest him at the moment, though, isn't it?
Potentially, but I just think he's playing so well, and all those players that you mentioned can't really do what Welbeck does in
Only be
terms of.
Ferguson would be the only
Yeah,
sort
no,
of
that's
like
true.
replacement,
Ferguson potentially,
but
but
he can't stay fit.
he can't stay fit, and I just think that Welbeck is the way he's playing at the moment is considerably better than Ferguson. So yeah, he's another cheap striker that you got to consider in the upcoming game weeks, and yeah, certainly firmly on my watch list.
Yeah, if I was buying a striker, a forward in game week 12, I think I'd have Welbeck top along with Cunha. I'd struggle to bring him in this week, but yeah, for the episode next week when we talk through game week 12 post international break, I think Welbeck is going to be the one for me. I just think he looks so good this season, and yeah, keep an eye on João Pedro because he's down to like 5.4 million now, and when he's playing, we think he's on pens. His data's always good. João Pedro might come back on the menu, especially if you can't stretch to the likes of a Welbeck or even a Raul Jimenez or a Wissa. I think João Pedro will be really interesting. Cool. Next game, Forest 3, West Ham 0. I hate Chris Wood with so much passion. I said last week he's the only player in FPL that like rattles me every week because every week I just watch and I'm like, Chris Wood's done nothing. And then he scores. And I was watching Sky Sports and they was like, Chris Wood hasn't touched the ball, but he's just scored. And I'm just like, every single time. But that's what you want from FPL. Like, I watch some forwards sometimes and they're sprinting around and I'm like, I actually don't want you to be sprinting around. Like Cunha, I was watching, he had a great game, we'll discuss it, but he's sprinting all around the pitch, dropping deep. Chris Wood just stands there and scores goals. And he's just in incredible goal scoring form. I think he's joint second now for goals in the Premier League this season. When did you get Chris Wood? Was it from the start?
No, on my wild card,
Okay.
brought him in. I said Forest had an amazing run of fixtures when I wild carded. So I tripled up actually. Sells, Anan and Wood.
Oh, and that's gone brilliantly then.
It's gone really well, apart from I keep benching Anan's points. Literally every week, because I've got quite a strong defense. I think play the three good defenders. But yeah, Wood, I think you're right. I mean, to give him a little bit of credit, he stays in that box, but he's got really good movement.
His movement's exceptional.
In and around that box, and he knows his job. He's got one job, and that's to score goals, and he doesn't really do a huge amount else. And from an FPL point of view, that's what you want. Again, that's another one that's been picked up by our AI at the start of the season. He was in all the AI wildcard teams, and we were like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Why is he in all the AI teams? But he proved us all wrong and the AI right for not the first time. But he's hell of a player. And Forest in general, you look at just them as a team and you think, wow, they've got everything at the moment. You look at the defense and those two defending Milenkovic and Murillo, and you just think they look like Champions League level defenders.
They really
are. They just as a unit as well. They just seem to work so well together. So they seem to be sort of building from that base, and you just. It's tough to sort of criticize Forest. I think the one thing, certainly from a fixtures manager point of view, is that they have got pretty tough fixtures coming up. So, if I didn't have Wood, I wouldn't be looking to buy him at this point. I think their fixtures, they ease up again in...
Yeah, so their fixtures coming up, they've got Newcastle and Arsenal in the next two, which aren't ideal. It's that Ipswich game in 13 I'm going to be petrified not owning him for. But then after that, it's City, United, Villa. Around game week, you could even look to bring him in at 17, Brentford, Spurs, Everton, Wolves, Liverpool, Southampton. They've not really got another brilliant run until game week 34. It's like a really nice stretch. But I do also wonder, could you just hold Chris Wood through? I mean, I'm sort of the opinion I would attack the fixtures. So I wouldn't even mind selling Chris Wood in 14 when he goes into City, United, Villa, maybe. But I also don't hate the idea of holding him because Forest are going to still score. And he is the only one that really looks likely to score in a given game, or at least will be involved in one of the goals. So, yeah, I don't mind keeping him. I don't even mind buying him, in all honesty, because I keep saying it's probably not the best entry point and he keeps making me look like an idiot. So I'm just going to say I wouldn't mind buying him. But this week, Cunha against Southampton at home.
Yeah.
With the fixtures they've got coming up, I almost feel like I would prefer to go into an entry point with a Wolves forward.
I think if you didn't have Cunha and you had Wood, I would look at that switch personally. I mean, but again,
it's tough to do.
I'm a big fixtures players. So that's the type of move which I would make. But obviously, I've got them both, and I'll probably hold Wood for the next 3, and then reassess going into City away.
I think the question is, how sustainable do you think it is? Because if you're saying you think he'll continue at that rate of scoring and assisting, and then great. But if not, if you think that it's going to calm down with the fixtures, then maybe that is the point that you make the switch. Interestingly, their defensive data is genuinely a joke. So last season, I kept saying during pre-season, look at Forest because they were 4th for expected goals conceded last season. It was like my favourite line during pre-season content. Kept going on about it. Didn't pick any Forest defenders, despite saying that. And this season, they're 2nd.
It's outrageous.
For non-penalty expected goals conceded. So they are, across now a season and a bit, almost a season and a third, 4th for expected goals conceded, then 2nd. They are a top 4 defence in the Premier League. And we've got that over a large enough sample size to say that now. It's not even that their fixtures have been that impressive. They've had a decent set of opening fixtures, but Nuno has just got them playing incredible football, and they are so solid at the back. I know Ola Aina goes and gets the 15-pointer. I think I prefer Milenkovic if I'm looking at the data, because Aina's data has not been that impressive. Milenkovic is sat at like 0.22 expected goal involvement per 90. Actually, in this game, he had the highest XG of any defender as well. He missed a huge chance at 0.31 XG. So I don't mind Aina. He's also very good for bonus points. But I feel like if I was
say the bonus, he seems to churn out bonus.
He does mop them up. But I actually think, again, if we're trying to guess who will get the next set of points rather than just reacting to the 15-pointer, I'd be very tempted by Milenkovic. But you could go for Moreno, Milenkovic, Murillo, or Ola Aina, or Sells. They all seem like pretty good pickups. But just look at those fixtures and only pick them up if they rotate well with your existing defenders, because I don't love the fixtures coming up from a defensive perspective.
I mean, yes, they have got a great defense, but I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking probably Ipswich is the only one in game week 13 that realistically I'm probably going to play Aina. Maybe Newcastle at home. I might play him this week actually, but yeah, in general, despite them being a very, very good defense, I probably wouldn't be looking to buy them just yet. I think there are other options which are potentially better.
Yeah, they'll probably pick up a clean sheet you'd expect against Ipswich, and then maybe a surprise one in there against United or Newcastle, but you still don't feel comfortable playing them. I would again look elsewhere, but we are quite fixtures-based managers. I'm not going to speak about West Ham, just target them. Terrible. Moving on very swiftly because I don't want any of their assets. Southampton 1, Everton 1. Probably another game we're not desperate to invest in, but some of us already are invested in Everton. So a massive result for Southampton. And I don't want to discredit them. It was a better performance, but still, you look at the data. Everton did have 3 big chances, 1.47 XG. It's a game where Everton would have expected at least a draw. Calvert-Lewin's the main one. Every week I sit here on FPL Therapy and say, I'd keep Calvert-Lewin another week because he's got, just please sell him. just get rid of him. He had only 1 shot and was subbed in the 62nd minute. It's just, I feel so sorry. And people will say it was a bad decision. I don't think it was. People that went for Calvert-Lewin instead of Wood in game week 6 on the wildcard, that has been one of the most horrendous point swings. I'm not even going to try and total it up because I don't want to make people feel bad that went for Calvert-Lewin, but that has been an awful point swing. And the data up until this week has actually been good. It's just he's not finishing. But he is still, and this was the case at the start of the season, statistically the worst finisher in the Premier League. Wow. He's got less than a 10% conversion rate. So what you're saying is you need him to get 10 big chances in the game, basically, to score 1. And that shows in the fact that he keeps blanking because his finishing's just so bad.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because he was so lethal under Carlo Ancelotti that you kind of wonder where's that player gone. I know he's had like a few injuries and stuff, but he just seems to just lack confidence at the moment. And you do think that if he can get that 1 or 2, that things could build from here. But yeah, I mean, I know that Everton fans are thinking, maybe Beto should start in front of him. I think he's going to continue to get subbed early if he's playing like he is at the moment. And I almost think that are Everton just playing them because they don't want to sort of lose him on a free transfer, want to keep him? Like, I don't know. I think you got to look elsewhere, certainly. And in general, I mean, it sounds a bit of a smart ass thing to say now, but the reason I didn't go Calvert-Lewin at the start is just because Everton. I mean, they're just not a team which you think can score a lot of goals.
I would just say, I said exactly this about Dominic Solanke last week and he got 16 points on, where I was like, just sell him, get rid of him. So beware. I've got a bit of a jinx going on here, but no, I just think based on what we've seen, you can't keep him. McNeil, I actually think has been slightly disappointing across the last 2 to 3 games. He's only picked up a single assist. I say only because this is what he's all about. Only 4 key passes in 3 weeks now, and he's only had 2 shots in the box. given that he's playing West Ham in Game Week 11, who we've just said are terrible, I don't mind holding him. And again, if you're rotating him in and out, it's great. But I've seen a lot of people have like Dibbling on their bench and they're starting McNeil every week. I'm not seeing enough from him in terms of goal threat, even assist threat. He's just not really providing. So Calvert-Lewin I'd sell. McNeil I would be happy holding a little bit longer, but probably start to look to pivot to someone like a Semenyo instead, I think, at that price.
Yeah, they got Brentford at home in game week 12 as well. So
Maybe a couple of weeks then?
I don't mind holding him for a couple of weeks and then looking to shift him on. Again, fixtures, West Ham, Brentford in the next two. I suppose you can make a similar argument for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but his form just seems...
No, please sell Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah,
we can't keep recommending him.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing with Calvert-Lewin is there's just so many other great forwards at the moment, isn't there? And that have got equally good fixtures. So the argument for him is difficult, to say the least.
Yep, I agree. Cool. Next game, Wolves 2, Palace 2. This was an absolutely chaotic, looked like basketball game. This I enjoyed watching it at the end because it was a really frustrating one as a Cunha owner. So it really was the Cunha show. He created 3 big chances, only had 2 shots. And I would say in the last 3 or 4 games, his goal threat has been lacking slightly. But he's on set pieces, corners, free kicks, should be penalties, 90 minutes, data. Like Cunha is just everything you want from an FPL asset, really. Apart from Wolves aren't great, and that's the only slight concern. Sarabia was I've never been so angry at a player that I don't even own in FPL, but he just kept spurning these chances. And even if you ignore the 2 chances he missed that Cunha created, when someone just looks like they're just holding up play and their positioning's bad. And I don't know how he stayed on the pitch for as long as he did. As soon as he came off, like 2 minutes after he came off, Wolves score. So I just think that was poor management by O'Neill. He should have been off at half time. But the reason we love Cunha as well, we spoke about baseline bonus. He has the highest baseline bonus of any forward in the Premier League with 15.34. The next is Ndiaye with 12.16, who is just not an option because he doesn't shoot. And then Raul Jimenez with 10.4. So there are only 3 forwards above 10 baseline bonus, and Cunha's on 15.34. So what that means, a forward gets 24 in the bonus point system for a goal. Cunha's going to be on about 39.40 in the bonus point system if he gets a goal, which is always enough for 3 bonus pretty much. So Cunha is a 9 pointer if he scores. And if he gets an assist, as we saw this week, he comes away with 1 bonus. It does add up the bonus points. It's something that I do want to incorporate more in. Most other forwards are averaging about 7 to 8 bonus points. So Wood, Welbeck, and Haaland all around 7 to 8. So that's not to say Wood and Welbeck don't get bonus points. But as we saw, Wood only came away with 1 bonus point it looks like he will, in game week 10. And Cunha would have definitely had 3 bonus if he'd scored the goal.
Yeah, he's just one hell of a good player, isn't he? You just
love that as well.
Him.
Like you just love watching him. Yeah,
just love watching. And sometimes, you're like me. You have to look at the data. I love piling through the stats. But if someone is such a good player compared to the rest of his team, it does count for something beyond stats. Like you just know that they're never going to get dropped. They're going to be the main man when it comes to set pieces, and they're going to likely hoover up the bonus points. So he's just a fantastic player. And although he's like playing reverse out of a position almost, you're thinking that's typically not very good for an FPL player. But because he's playing in midfield, that is the reason that he's hoovering up the bonus points. So yeah, one hell of a player. And Wolves, again, they're one of the teams which have an insanely good run of fixtures. And as a fixture manager, I'm just thinking, which Wolves players can I get in and keep in for a long time? Because they're really weird. They had a terrible start in terms of fixtures. And I think they've done okay. I know that O'Neill's under a fair bit of pressure, but I think they've done okay. And when they've got the ball, they look like a pretty good footballing unit.
Yep.
And I just think that they're going to score a fairly decent amount of goals in the upcoming sort of 8 games or so. So, Cunha's looking like a bit of I wouldn't say a no-brainer pick because you're right, the shot volume isn't quite there that you'd hope for, but he's got so many things going for him, hasn't he?
Yeah, I agree. Their fixtures, as you say, are so funny. So they had those terrible opening, like 8 or 9 games. Then it's just a sea of green till 17, including Southampton, Ipswich, Leicester. Then they've got a terrible block again from 18 to 26, where they have United, Spurs, Newcastle, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Forest. Like, it's terrible. And then from 27 and beyond, it's just a perfect run of fixtures. So it's the strangest thing I've ever seen, where they've just had it terrible, great, just 4 blocks of fixtures. But what that means is, over the next 8 game weeks, you are facing the likes of Southampton, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester. They then even go into United and Spurs in 18, 19. Like, you could keep your Wolves assets until January quite happily. And the likes of Cunha and Aït-Nouri are just incredibly nailed. Strand Larsen's an interesting one because he's obviously $1 million cheaper than Cunha. As a data-driven manager, I'm struggling because he's got 0.26 XG per 90, which is like not much higher than like Milenkovic. So I'm struggling to go out there and say he's a great player, but he reminds me of not as good, but Chris Wood, where he's not doing anything else other than being in the right position to score goals. And we saw that. Cunha put in one of the most incredible performances in this game, and Strand Larsen was just stood there to tap in the goal that Cunha provided for him. So I think he is great value, but are you of the opinion if you've got the million, you find a way to get to Cunha, or do you think Strand Larsen's a fine transfer in?
I think it depends on pricing. I think if you've got the million, then go for Cunha, but I think he's a great option, to be honest. You know, you do look at those numbers and you are a little bit worried, but you've got to remember those numbers have come from a horrific run of fixtures.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm not too worried about those numbers, and I think that he's definitely in his price range. I think he's the best forward pick in the game for his price. But if equally, if you can stretch the extra million, then go for Cunha. But that extra million, you know, this season can be very, very important. So I do think that there's an argument to go for him. Potentially, I don't even hate the double up. I suppose that's one of the things that I really don't mind doing is doubling up on teams in defense or attack. I'm more than happy to do that. And if it looks like he's going to be a great pick for the next 8 game weeks, and you mentioned those fixture swings for FPL players, that's what you want. It's dreamland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you know when to get them and you know when to hop off them. So I really like Wolves at the moment and looking at all their players.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say if you've got up to 7 million, Cunha's my favorite forward to bring in. If you've only got around 5.5 to even like 5.8, I'd say Strand Larsen. So they're both my favorite options, but obviously at very differing prices. And that million does go a long way. Just on Ait-Nouri, I'm actually going to say no stats here. Just watch the highlights and you will be like, my goodness, how did he come away with nothing? I would say he probably is the second most advanced player for Wolves after Strand Larsen. Ait-Nouri on average had a higher position than Cunha in that game. He was popping up as the number 9 on like 7 or 8 occasions in that first half. It was scary. So I still think Ait-Nouri is comfortably the standout cheap defender. I don't care if Wolves never keep a clean sheet ever again because he's got 5 returns in 10 games, 5 attacking returns, 3 goals, 2 assists. The 4 yellow cards, I understand it's off-putting, but we speak about fixture runs. Because you're going to own Ait-Nouri until game week 18, 19, if he misses one of those games, he misses one. It's not like you're bringing in Ait-Nouri only for 2 or 3 games. Then if he misses one, it's terrible. We spoke about this before. Like, I feel like if you're owning a player for a long set of fixtures, like Jackson, as also we'll discuss on 4 yellows, but you're going to own Jackson probably right up until 1920, you'd imagine, if you bring him in. So I think if that's the case for the player, the 4 yellow cards doesn't bother me. Semenyo is another player on 4 yellows, but you're holding Semenyo for the long run. So would the 4 yellow card situation put you off Ait-Nouri if you were buying this week, or do you not really care?
No, not at all. Yeah, definitely a player that I'm looking at. And I think the slight difference between Ait-Nouri and Jackson is that, Ait-Nouri, what is he, 4.5?
4.7 now.
4.7.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But look, he's easily benchable. Jackson, it sort of depends on your squad structure, whether you're playing, whether you've got a good bench to cover it. But yeah, Ait-Nouri, I think he's a hell of a pick. And I mean, the other one down the other wing is Semedo. I actually really like him. He's got really good underlying data as well, and he's not quite as attacking as Ait-Nouri, but he's not far off, and he's very, very creative. And I think over the 2, you probably would pick Ait-Nouri, but yeah, I think that he's another good option from Wolves.
And Semedo's 4.5 as well. So if you're looking at thinking, I'm priced out of Ait-Nouri, but I want a Wolves defender. I mean, I like Dawson because he loves a bullet header, but Semedo at 4.5. Yeah, if you watch the games again, Ait-Nouri and Semedo are playing, I wouldn't even say as wingers, they're like inside forwards at points. They just get so far forward. So yeah, I like the pair of them. Wolves are just a good team to invest in. And no, they're not suddenly the best team in the league, but I've been trying to say this for a while and it keeps coming true. I don't need Wolves to even win games for my players to get points. Like I brought Ait-Nouri and Cunha in game week 7. That week, they both got 9 pointers. Cunha then goes and gets another 9 pointer. Ait-Nouri got a 6 pointer last week. Like, because they're so attacking, I don't really care if Wolves are playing well. I just need those 2 to get the points. And it's the same with Strand Larsen as well. Cool. Next game, Spurs 4, Villa 1. As a Spurs fan, I'll let you take this away. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, it was a funny game, actually. Like the early doors, you're thinking, oh no, here we go again. But yeah, I think in that second half especially, they really began to turn it on. They looked like a pretty well-oiled machine at times. And they can do that. And Spurs are just so frustrating to watch because you know how well they can play. And sometimes they just I don't know what's going on. They just don't click for whatever reason. But yeah, as a Slanky owner, obviously I was well, rub that one in a bit
Yeah,
more.
I just silently
as,
cry. Oh,
as a Slanky owner,
If
I was
you're
very
listening on
happy.
audio, I'm just sat here just sobbing, and Will's got a big smile on his face.
Yeah, he had a hell of a game, and he's that first finish was brilliant, and obviously the second one was a pretty much a tap in, but equally that's what he's in the team for, is to make those tap ins and be a little bit of Chris Wood about him in terms of just staying in the box in the right place. Son, it was good to see him play okay, and obviously he had a brilliant assist. Apparently he was always due to come off early, but he looked very, very surprised.
Maybe it wasn't that early, yeah, because I've not seen Son react like that ever on the pitch. He's normally relatively calm, at least towards the manager, but he lost his cool, didn't he, on the bench?
He was not happy, and I think Postecoglou came out after the game and said it was always the plan to take him off at that sort of time. So it's a bit confusing to see that reaction. Maybe he thought, I'm playing really well here. I've just done a really good assist. I'm feeling great, and then he's just frustrated. But I suppose sometimes managers need to make those decisions to sort of protect the player, even if they don't think they need protecting. But yeah, going into next game week, I think that he potentially could be one of the best captaincy shouts on if he can get those minutes up.
Yeah.
And also Solanke against Leicester, you got to think that he's going to be a great captaincy shout as well.
So
sorry, against Ipswich.
Yeah, so if you had Son, I mean, it really is the minutes, because he got less than, it was like 54 minutes he got in this game. If someone told you get 60 minutes of Son, then I don't think I would rather 90 minutes of Salah or 90 minutes of Haaland. So I think for me to want to captain Son against Ipswich, I'd want to know or feel quite confident he's getting 75. I think at that point he's the standout captain. What I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot too much, but like, what do you make of his projected minutes? Do you think he is going to get to that level, or do you think it'll be another 60-minute sub?
I think a lot depends on in Europe during the week on whether we see him. I mean, he might not even travel because I just can't see him playing that match, and I hope he doesn't play as a sort of a Spurs fan, even though I don't own him. But I think if he doesn't play that match, then I think he's got a good chance of getting some decent minutes. I would say about 70. If he played 55 this week and he's got another full week of rest, then you would hope that he's pushing over 70. And as you say, I think around that minute mark, he becomes a very, very good captaincy shout.
What was the reason for Solanke suddenly deciding to actually shoot? Because people pointed, and I pointed to the fact that Maddison didn't start great, but it wasn't actually until Maddison then came on really towards the back end of the game he looked even better. So it can't have just been the Maddison thing. Because it had happened over such a large spell of games where he was dropping so deep, he wasn't getting in the box, he wasn't shooting. But in this game, he had 5 shots in the box, 1.6 XG. It must have just been a small tweak from Ange, but he was back to playing as like a Chris, like a proper number 9. And that was frustrating, I think, for those of us that sold him, because we'd watched in the last 4 games in all competitions 3 shots. So what do we think moving forward? Is he going to go back to what we saw from before? Was that just a little spell where he was struggling? Like what to make of Solanke at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, as a Solanke owner, I'm very happy owning him. And, as I said, I brought him in not for the Crystal Palace match. And after that match, I was thinking, hang on, might have made a bit of a mistake here. Yeah. But equally, I kind of always knew that he is still the spearhead of that Spurs attack. He is going to be the one most in and around the box. And even though he might not always be the one getting the shots, he is going to be that focal point. And I just knew that, sometimes data, you don't necessarily need to follow it completely blindly, even, if people are getting into the right positions, which you say he was dropping deep, but he's still up there as the main sort of focal point of Spurs, and Spurs are very, very attacking team. So I do think that, sometimes stats are great, but sometimes it can sort of overcomplicate things when you just look at Spurs are a good attacking team. He's playing up front. They've got good fixtures. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So I'm very, very happy owning him. Would I bring him in now? I think I might. Yeah, I think I might. Ipswich at home, I think that he's a credible captaincy shout. Equally, if I hadn't got Cunha, I'd probably edge towards someone like a Cunha as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I personally think that over the last 4 games, I've seen very different versions of Solanke. So I wouldn't give him the armband in a million years, but I might be biased just because I've sold him. I also wouldn't bring him in because, again, all I've seen over the last 4 before this one was generally terrible performances from an FPL perspective. So if you've got Solanke, if you've got any Spurs assets, you absolutely keep them for this week. Not in a million years would you sell them. The only other asset I was getting quite a lot of questions around was actually Pedro Porro. Is he worth the money? Again, you're going to keep him for this week, but longer term, how would you feel about owning Pedro Porro?
I suppose the difference is that I'm not that keen on Spurs defense. Like, I like Spurs attack. I think we can score goals. I just really worry about our defense, especially with Van der Ven out, especially with, we don't quite know the situation with Romero at the moment, but yeah, longer term, Porro, obviously he can pop up and get a goal or assist. We all know that, but I haven't had him all season, and I think that he's just one of those players which obviously huge potential, but especially with the defensive situation, even if Van der Ven and Romero were fit, I still would sort of question the fact that we can't keep clean sheets.
Yeah.
But he's decent value, so I don't hate owning him, but yeah, I don't think I certainly wouldn't be looking to bring him in.
Yep, I would agree with that. I think after the Ipswich game, I'd be happy. I mean, you could keep him, but I'd be pretty happy moving him on after that. Rodgers obviously had a really, really good game, scored a goal, created a big chance, 9-pointer from a 5.4 million asset. He's just comfortably the best cheap midfielder to own for me. I don't think you want to start him every week, but this just goes to show, like, I might have to start him against Liverpool this week, assuming he's fit. On paper, I don't like that, but could Villa score? Yeah. And is Rodgers going to be involved? There's a good chance. So, as I said, he did come off in the 69th minute with a knock. At first, it looked quite bad, but then he was also very upset about being subbed. And Emery said after the game, Rodgers was very upset about being subbed, so it's probably okay. They obviously play midweek as well, so I think we'll find out very, very soon if Rodgers is okay. If he is a doubt, I still think I'll probably try and keep him, and I'll just try to start someone else instead. I would need him to be out for a while to sell him. And I honestly could see myself keeping Rodgers all season. I just think at that cheap price, there's no one that really stands out to me instead. Cool. Final game then was my team, Manchester United 1, Chelsea 1. In a similar way to how you said, I'm finding it a little bit difficult to know what to make of this game. I think probably 1-1 is about fair, but Chelsea definitely struggled to create those clear-cut chances. I didn't ever feel at any point that we were really under threat. They only had the one big chance. United had 4 big chances. So in terms of like total XG in the game, it was relatively close, but I think United had a couple more of those chances where you're like, they really should have finished that. Chelsea just didn't quite click into gear. I thought Man United were marginally better than usual. The issue we've got right now is that a lot of our players are just making very bad decisions on the pitch, and that obviously stems from the manager, but that is also on the players as well. So Garnacho is one that a lot of people are asking about. I've been recommending him across the last 2 weeks. I now wouldn't bring in Garnacho. If you've got him, don't stress too much, but under Amorim, I don't know where he suits the system. So Amorim plays a 3-4-3. He's going to probably play Bruno, I would imagine, on the left or the right. I don't see Bruno playing as a central midfielder as one of only 2 mids. So I think Bruno will play one of those advanced roles. Looking at the players that he's had play from in the past, Amorim, I kind of feel like Amad Diallo is probably the one that will play on the right-hand side. And he'll obviously have the option of Rashford too. We could even see a situation where Xerxes plays in one of the roles. So could Garnacho play as like the left mid / left wing back at some point? Maybe, but I just wonder where Garnacho fits in. And if you watch the last couple of games, if Amorim's been watching them closely, he will not be impressed with Garnacho because Garnacho's decision-making has been so erratic. There was a point in the game where he had the opportunity to slide Mazraoui in, failed to do that, turned backwards. This was at 1-1, by the way, then played a terrible pass in field where it got intercepted and then didn't track back. And Casemiro, I've never seen a player scream at another player like that. Let's just say that, yeah, he screamed at Garnacho for that. So I worry about Garnacho in the long term. And I just think we need to see Amorim come in. And I feel that way with a lot of players. Like Mazraoui's been brilliant. But does he perfectly suit the Amorim system? Maybe less so. Once Luke Shaw and Malacia are back, if they ever are, they're obviously naturally left-footed. I could see them on the left with Dalot on the right. So there are so many United players that with the fixtures over the next 3, they look great. But one of them's with Ruud, then Amorim comes in. There's enough doubt for me. If you're asking if you still, for some reason, want to bring in Man United players, I guess Leicester at home this week, Bruno and Dalot are the safest 2. They'll play for Ruud, they'll play for Amorim. They're both Portuguese. Bruno will find a way to be in that team, and Dalot is probably our best wing-back / full-back at the moment.
Do you think Dallow's absolutely nailed on that right wing-back?
I don't think he... So for Rude, 100% nailed. For the next game, he'll start. Once Amorim comes in, I'd give him 90% because I think he's the most attacking, technically gifted from an attacking perspective, full-back, wing-back that we have. I also think due to his height and physicality, he could play right centre-back. And we know that Amorim likes to play with quite quick right centre-back and left centre-back. So you could even see a role where he plays there. And if he plays there, it'd be very good for bonus points. I don't see Dallow being dropped anytime soon. The only concern would be if we play Luke Shaw and Malacia at left wing-back, it's then Mazraoui or Dallow. And if he's very impressed with Mazraoui when he comes in, then Dallow could be rotated. But yeah, for now, I would be very surprised if Bruno or Dallow are dropped. The only other player is Højlund. I just don't see Xerxes starting for us as the 9, at least on a consistent basis. Højlund might get the odd early sub and he might not get 90 minutes. But when I look at, I think it's Gyökeres for Sporting Lisbon, what they've done with him, Højlund for me is the kind of forward that I could imagine that Amorim will like. So yeah, if I was to say 3 players, other than Onana, if you want to go there, it's Højlund, Bruno, Dallow. But I'm not necessarily suggesting you do. For Chelsea, Reece James has played 90 minutes 2 games in a row and hasn't yet, it appears anyway, broken.
Got to be some kind of record.
I know, and I absolutely love him. I brought him in last season and he got a yellow card, red card, own goal, and then injured. It was the worst spell of owning a player. I think he got me -1 point in 3 weeks. So I'll probably go back there at some point because I love Reece James. The only concern is we spoke about it with Trent earlier. Reece James is honestly playing like a right back / right centre back at points. He's just not getting up and down. We see that Gusto's doing that. Then Gusto went off at half-time against United. Cucurella came on, and the commentators were like, this is perfect. Reece James will be the attacking one now. Reece James still sat back, and it was Cucurella that was the one going forward. I just don't think with these issues he's suffered with over the last couple of years, I don't think he's going to risk it. So I think his minutes will be limited. And even if he does start, it's not the same Reece James. The positive is that he's taken in swinging set pieces now. So Palmer takes him off the right side. James takes him off the left side. So he does have that assist threat. But yeah, Reece James probably not worth the risk for me. Are you tempted?
I'm not at all tempted, no. I've been burned too many times.
Okay, I was going to say, if you've been there in the past, then just...
Yeah, no, he's a hell of a player. Like, he's such a good football player. And I really hope that he stays fit just from like a pure footballing perspective and an England fan perspective. But I mean, maybe if he's playing a bit more withdrawn and he's not bombing up and down the wing, maybe that's good for his hamstrings. I don't know. Yeah. But I think for an FPL option, you can't really seriously consider him, especially going into Christmas period.
Oh, exactly. I was going to say in December, you're not going to see him play every game, especially with Cucurella. It's been really good this season at left back, and Gusto can do the job. So even they could play like a Disassi at right back. I just can't see James starting enough games, but I'll keep my eye on him, and I might be tempted at some point. Cole Palmer was pretty good again. I would say less effective on a consistent basis. He had some of those moments where you're just like, yeah, you're one of the best players in the world at the moment, but it wasn't consistent. And I feel like he struggled to get into the game at points. He did have a couple of chances. As I say, at the time of us recording on Monday afternoon, looks like he's going to pick up a bonus point. That says more about the state of that game rather than Cole Palmer. Like, let's actually take a quick look at the bonus points, because I think it was on like 20 something on the bonus point system. Yeah, so Cole Palmer's on 23 in the bonus point system, which if you don't regularly check it, that's very, very, very low to be picking up a bonus point. So it's not that his performance was that great. I just think no one else in the game really had those moments. He did or he was hobbling around with a knock towards the end of the game. It was essentially, if you missed it, Lissandro Martinez kicked him on his knee. So I think it was an impact injury. He was icing it at the end. If you check your FPL team, he is now flagged, but I wouldn't be stressed. It didn't look like a particularly serious injury.
I think he's pretty robust as well, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
As a player.
Yeah, so we were saying that when Palmer goes down, you're never stressed that he's going to come off. He just gets back up.
Yeah. No, he's obviously one hell of an FPL pick. And I mean, I'll ask you, out of the sort of the 4, I suppose, the Palmer, Salah, Haaland, Saka, what order would you put those in at the moment?
Yeah,
considering value as well, not just sort of overall points potential.
I think Palmer has to be 1. Yeah. So I looked at this on my YouTube video, and between game week 10 and 19, I think Cole Palmer is the best captain in 7 of those weeks, or at least the joint best captain. We had Salah was the best captain in 5 of them, Haaland in 4, and then Saka and Son in 3 apiece. So I feel like if I were to order the premiums at the moment, it would be Palmer first, Salah second, Haaland third, Saka 4th, Son 5th.
Yeah.
And that just comes down to captaincy. I feel like that's the only way we can pick at the moment. And when I look at their fixtures, Leicester, Southampton, Brentford, Everton, Ipswich, all between now and game week 19. I'd captain Palmer in all of those. And the thing we love about Palmer is that explosive ability. Saka's never scored a hat-trick for Arsenal, and that's no disrespect to him. He's brilliant. He ticks along, but Palmer scored 2 last year. He's already got 4 goals this year. Like, he has that ability that not many players do. I would even say as much, if not more, than Erling Haaland. Like, how many times has Erling Haaland gone out there and, in fact, he's never scored a 25 points. I think 23 points is the most Haaland's ever got. So Palmer's just got that ability. Once he gets one, he's got that mindset of, I'm going to go again and again and again and again. So
smells blood, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
No, for me, that's exactly the same order. I think Palmer, streets ahead. Well, no, not streets ahead, but he's for the value and the fact that he's a midfielder and he gets those extra points, and Chelsea's fixtures are so good. And I think that, if you haven't got him in your team at the moment, then he's got to be sort of the prime candidate to bring in with Chelsea's fixtures. Just going quickly back to United, what do you make of Rashford? And then where would he play in under Amorim?
So assuming that he wants to play, so we're again assuming that he's going to play a 3-4-3 Amorim. He could play, he could decide, and it would be the sign of a good manager, really, that we don't really have the players for a 3-4-3. We don't have very good wing backs. We don't really have the midfielders to play that role. If he looks at the team and says, if we don't play 3-4-3, then who knows? But let's assume that he plays his traditional classic 3-4-3. Assuming that he wants to play defenders as the wing backs or midfielders. So let's say plays Mazraoui and Dalot. You've only got 2 wing spots in the team, along with 2 midfielders. If he doesn't want to play Bruno Fernandes in midfield, that's one of the wing spots taken with Bruno. As I said, I just see Ahmad as being a player that suits the system a little bit more on the right-hand side. So that's immediately the 2 spots gone. If Bruno is playing in midfield, or he doesn't like Ahmad, you could still see a situation where he's got Garnacho and Rashford, but then that's requiring Bruno to play a role that I don't think he should, and Ahmad not getting the minutes, which I think he will. Ahmad's decision-making is already better than Garnacho's. So I think Rashford will be first choice at first, but I feel like Ahmad will come into his thinking a lot more. And so in the long term, I don't particularly like Rashford. Now, if you're asking over the next 3 weeks, I think Rashford starts getting, in fact, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't start Game Week 11. Garnacho should be the one that drops out. So we might see, if Garnacho's dropped out, Ahmad and Rashford in Game Week 11. Once Amorim comes straight in, I would imagine that the coaches will tell him Rashford's a reliable player. Now, he's been at the club for a while. He won't want to upset the fans. So I could see him playing him there. But yeah, in the long term, I just don't know. I just feel like there's so much unknown with Man United that I just wouldn't be willing to take the risk. But this week alone, could see him do damage against Leicester. We've spoken about how many chances they concede. But yeah, I probably wouldn't take the risk on anyone other than Bruno and maybe Dalot at the moment.
Yeah, I think Bruno is the one player which, especially for these next 3, it seems like there's a pretty big opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because obviously they got a hell of a good fixture this week, and then Amorim comes in and they got 2 really juicy ones as well. And you just think he's going to be nailed. We're hoping that he's going to be playing further forward. And obviously he's the set piece king. You just think he's got to get points over these next 3, hasn't it? I know he's been pretty disappointing from an FPL point of view this season, but it's difficult to see him not racking up points. It's just trying to fit him in along with all the other premiums. That's the issue.
This is it. It's the price point. Like if you have the price point for Bruno, you've got probably a very different structure to a lot of people. Like for us, it's kind of premium midfielders and Burmo cheap. There's not many people that have that price point. So I guess if you were looking to maybe you're like, I don't really fancy Saka for the next couple, I won't move to Palmer yet. I'll go Bruno and then look to pivot. Because yeah, Leicester and Ipswich in the next 2, they are the worst 2 defenses in the league. So in terms of fixtures, it doesn't get any better. One of those is the final game that Ruud will manage at Old Trafford. And then the next one is the first game under Amorim. You could see a lot of goals in both those games. So yeah, if you have a route to Bruno, I really don't mind it.
Before this game week, I was looking at Semenyo to Bruno because I can afford it. But now Semenyo, he's got good fixtures and he looks great as well. And I want him long term. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I do really like Bruno. I am very, very tempted, I've got to say.
That's such a high upside move, but it's also one that in a few weeks you'll think I'd rather the Semenyo price point in my team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Right. The final game is Fulham Brentford, which we're recording this before. So we'll have to discuss Raul Jimenez's hat trick on next week's episode. He's not going to start now. I'm all of a sudden really worried that Muniz might start ahead of him. But yeah, so Will has Mbeumo only. I've got Raul Jimenez and Mbeumo in that game. I'll discuss it on my YouTube channel later in the week, how that goes. And yeah, we'll see. Be very interesting because Brentford are incredibly good from an attacking perspective, not very good defensively. And then Fulham are the opposite, not as good going forward, but very good defensively. So it'll be a bit of an interesting matchup there as to see whether Fulham will still score the goals, whether Brentford will find a way to break Fulham down. But yeah, I've got all eyes on Raul Jimenez and Mbeumo for that game. And also like Wissa, Smith Rowe, Pinnock, Collins, Flecken. There's so many
Smith
assets.
Rowe's the big rank killer there. If he pops off,
Sorry, it was
he's on
like 33% of my
30%.
rank.
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, Smith Rowe hopefully has a quiet game. Every time I've said this, so we had Semenyo playing on Monday night and I didn't own him. And I was like, fingers crossed for Semenyo blank. He scored. The week after that, we had Chris Wood playing on Monday night, and I was like, fingers crossed for a Chris Wood blank. He scored. So I'm not going to say I want anyone to blank, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how that game goes. Cool. Right, next section. I'm going to turn the laptop away from you slightly. So we've got some quick fire questions.
Oh,
So
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I'm going to present you 6 quick fire questions. And yeah, you've got, let's say, 5 to 10 seconds if you want to give a bit of justification, or if you just want to give me one word, feel free to do that as well. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Sounds good.
Best captain for game week 11.
Oh, wow. Salah.
Would you sell Haaland to Salah for a -4 hit this
No,
week?
definitely not.
Would you do it for free?
I hate these questions because it depends on your team. No.
Okay. Best cheap forward to buy, let's say under 7 million for game week 11.
Cunha.
Is Rico Lewis a sell this week or would you hold?
I'd probably sell if you got the free transfers.
Favorite defender to buy below 5 million?
Nuri.
And who is the best goalkeeper to buy in FPL at the moment?
Ooh.
Let's say under 5 million, so not including the premiums.
Probably still sells long term, even though the upcoming fixtures are tough.
Smash that. There you go. Performing under pressure. Awesome. I would agree with, I think, pretty much everything you said there, in all honesty. I think captaincy is the big one that I'm a bit unsure on this week because I obviously own Haaland and Salah, which I'll discuss in a second, but I almost feel like I wish I had the decision made for me. This is the issue when you own both of them, that you have that choice. Cool. So the next thing we do is a little prediction game. So every week, our guests provide us with 3 differentials, 10% or under, that they think will perform well for the upcoming week. And then we wait until they perform and we put them on a leaderboard. So as of right now, we've officially had, including my guess in game week 5, we've had 11 guesses. So the leaderboard is now full up. It's still Praz from game week 2 that's top of the leaderboard with 20 points, then Pricey with 16, and then Chai with 15. So that's the top 3. Last week, we had Baker, who got very unfortunate. He guessed Savio, who obviously had the injury and then didn't end up coming on. Cunha got the 6-pointer, but really should have come away with more. And then Garnacho got the 2-pointer. So he's actually joint bottom with Fran with 8 points. And I looked at those 3 and I actually quite like those picks. So 20 points to beat. I feel like the 3 you've picked are all playing against newly promoted sides at home.
You can tell by now that I'm a fixtures guy.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. This is what it proves. So we're hopeful. So the first one is a Spurs player, one we've not actually spoken about at all, which is Kulusevski at 3.8%. So is it you like the matchup? You know the minutes are good. What is it that you like him?
I do like the matchup. He's playing well. He's taking up good positions. He's creating a lot of decent chances. There isn't sort of, I suppose I wanted to pick someone from that Spurs Ipswich game, and all the other ones are probably over 10%, or they're certainly not differentials anyway, certainly not in my mind. So he comes in and, I think he's second for key passes over the last 6 game weeks. He does create a lot of good opportunities, and Ipswich are so bad.
Yeah, no,
so it's as simple as that, really.
It is pretty simple. I like that pick a lot. Kulusevski is a very eye test pick. If I didn't look at stats ever, I would have bought Kulusevski ahead of Solanke, Johnson, Son, because when you watch the games, he runs everything. Yeah. Cool. Next pick we have spoken about a little bit, but 0.2% owned is Semedo.
Yeah. I just love Nuri and I love Semedo. I think both of them are fantastic picks, but obviously Nuri, I don't actually know his ownership percentage, but I think he's probably over.
That's a good point. I actually don't know at this stage.
Might be over 10%.
Oh, 10.8. Yeah,
10.8. Okay. So yeah, I think he's had higher XG and XA compared to Nuri over the last 3 game weeks, and he's just so far forward. He's not really doing much defending, and Wolves have a great fixture. So yeah, he's again a little bit left field, but I like him as a pick. And I would go for Nuri over him, like if I had the funds to go 4.7 over 4.5, which most people will do. But yeah, if you can't stretch to 4.7, I think he's a great shout.
Yeah, I think along with, we spoke about Hall and Kirkes earlier, but again, if you're looking 4.5 and below, I have no issue. Semedo started every game since like game week 3 or 4, so minutes look pretty secure.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll get quite the attacking output, but also his injury record's, I think, slightly better than Nuri as well. So yeah, listen, I don't even mind it as a transfer in, but definitely for game week for game week 11. I like it a lot. And then one player that you asked me about a second ago, and we now know why, was Marcus Rashford. So 3.2%.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole match against United Chelsea, but what the part that I did see, I thought he did look like he's got a bit of his mojo back. And I know he didn't score or anything, but he hit the crossbar and he seemed to be getting into good positions, and he's got to be motivated, right, to get into that team on Amarin. And yeah, they've got a hell of a good fixture. So thought worth a punt on Rashford. He's hell of a low ownership considering his FPL pedigree, and I think he'll be up for it.
I think he'll start. I think he'll start on the left. I think I could see Ahmad on the right. Leicester concede most of their chances down their right flank. So if Rashford is on the left, it's a great matchup for him as well. And I would agree when I watch that game, if I'm going to drop one of Garnacho or Rashford, he might not drop either, by the way, but he's got to drop Garnacho before Rashford after watching that game. I thought Rashford played a lot better. His decision-making was a little bit better than Garnacho as well. Yeah. Cool. So 3 newly promoted teams they're playing against, all at home. Surely we've got to get you into the top 5 or top 3 there. Let us know who your 3 differentials are. Let us know if you agree with any of those. And let us know if any of the weeks you've managed to get over 20 points, because I've been a bit disappointed by our guests. They've been stinking it up a little bit. So hopefully this week you managed to break into, let's go for the top 3, 15 or more points, surely.
Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah, cool. Right. So let's then just finish off with both of our teams for game week 11. So I'll read out your team, Will, for those that are listening. So we've got double Forest defense, Sells and Aina against Newcastle at home. You do have some bench cover, though, with Fabianski. You could play instead against Everton at home, Lewis against Brighton away on the bench, and also Mikolenko against West Ham away on the bench. So you have the option there if you decide not to go for the double up. The other defenders are Gabriel and Trent. Maybe not the best fixtures on paper, but pretty happy playing them any week. Midfield 4, Semenyo comes back in for a nice victory against Brentford. And Burmo in that same game. You've got to hope maybe a 2-2 there within Burmo and Semenyo braces. And then Palmer and Salah as the other 2. You've got Salah armband currently. And then your front 3 is Wood, Cunha, and Solanke. That looks like a very nice front 3 all playing at home. Cool. So how many transfers do you have? How much money in the bank? And what are your current plans with your team?
Just the one free transfer. So I'm probably planning to bank this week. I think my big decision is, well, I'm half thinking of Semenyo to Bruno. I don't think I'll do it just for, the long term. I think that, getting Bruno is going to a bit of an awkward price point, and I'm probably going to want that money later down the road. Big decisions are going to be trying to make sure I don't bench more points, to be honest, because I feel like I'm getting it wrong each week at the moment. And that's sometimes easier having a weak bench, isn't it? But I think the defense is going to be the tricky one, whether to play Aino or go Trent, Gabriel, and Lewis. I think Lewis is going to start, but we'll see.
Yeah, I did notice that when I looked at your team. It's quite a deep squad. Like your cheapest defender is Mikolenko and your cheapest attacker is Rodgers. So you've got quite a bit of bench cover. And obviously with Fabianski now starting, you've also got rotating. You could rotate the keepers. So is this something you always do, or is it just something that's naturally you've just found the ability to?
No, actually, I usually play it with absolute dirt cheap bench. I was going to say a rude word there. But I think it's because of this season that we can bank transfers. Yep. I don't, if someone, I don't know, gets 5 yellows, I want to just be able to leave them on my bench. I don't want to have to transfer in and out. Yep. Or if someone's out injured for a couple of weeks or lose their starting spot, it just gives you that ability to save transfers and not have to spend transfers when you don't need to. So that was the thinking behind it. In reality, though, it's just been bloody painful because usually I just don't have to worry about my bench.
Yep.
But yeah, the reality of seeing that many bench points, and it's not just last week. It's been a fair few weeks that I've had good points on my bench. So I am actually probably won't be this week, but I'm half considering playing my bench boost at some point in a single game week. And the reason behind that is that I always spend ages planning for the bench boosts, using loads of transfers to get a good bench, planning my wild card around a bench boost.
Yep.
And making sure that I have obviously a really good bench, which you don't need outside of the bench boost game. And it just, and often you get like 1 or 2 players that have an extra game, and you just think, well, for all of that, you might just, if I get a good single game week where I've got some good fixtures, I might just play it. So that's the other, thought process that Probably comes from having 30 odd points on my bench last game week. But
This is the thing.
yeah,
I feel like the bench boost is often a net negative for our teams. Like I looked at last season. I'm the same
yeah,
as you. I saved my wild card, planned transfers around it. When I actually got to the bench boost, only 2 of the 4 had a double. One of them was Brighton, who had like it was like Man United and Villa or something that week. Like it was a very
mm,
difficult double, and the other one just was a suboptimal player. And I'm like, I've I've lost all of the points in the meantime because I've probably wildcarded at a slightly different point than I would want to. I've got too much money invested on the bench, which then means that my actual starting 11 is weaker. I genuinely think the bench boost is one of the biggest traps in FPL. So yeah,
yeah,
if you're ever sat there, and especially this season when we're probably only going to have 2 double game weeks, unless there are further postponements, if you're sat there in a single game week and you just look at your bench and go, I see points, all 15 of my players are likely to play, and that's the key thing because you don't want to obviously have someone from your bench would have eventually come on. I say play it. Sadly, my bench isn't
yeah.
looking quite as strong at the moment. So for my team for game week 11, I've got my goalkeepers of Fabianski and Sanchez. I don't really want to play Fabianski because West Ham are terrible, but I feel like I've got to play Fabianski against Everton at home rather than Sanchez against Arsenal at home. And then from next week and beyond, Sanchez's fixtures are really good. My back 3, I think, picks itself. I've got Gabriel, Lewis, and 8 Nuri. If Lewis isn't looking like he's going to play, I'll probably sell him or sell Davis on the bench. I've also got Vandenberg against Bournemouth, which I suppose isn't terrible, but Brentford just really aren't a great defence. We'll see again how they get on tonight, but I feel like I'm okay with the defence, but Lewis and Davis, longer term, I could see myself wanting to remove. But this week, Gabriel, Nuri, and Lewis is fine. I've got a pretty okay midfield 4. Salah, Palmer, and Burmo, very happy with. And then Rodgers is the only one. I don't ideally want to play Rodgers this week against what has been the best defence in the league this season, especially if Konate is available, especially given that he's come up with a knock. They've got another midweek game. Is he going to play in that? He is looking a little bit fatigued, Rodgers. He's not getting 90 minutes on a consistent basis now. My issue is my other midfield is Dibbling. I don't want to sell Rodgers, and I've only got 0.2 in the bank, so I can't afford to sell Dibbling. So that midfield situation isn't ideal. Front 3 I'm a lot happier with. I've got Haaland, Cunha, and Raul Jimenez. Again, if Raul Jimenez doesn't start tonight or looks a bit stinky, then maybe I won't be as confident with that. It's a comfortable role, I think, the team. I don't see anything that's like desperate. I need to make a change. I could see myself making a defender change if I have doubts around Lewis. I don't really like Davis and Vandenberg as cover, so that's a possibility. I can't buy anyone for Dibbling, and I'm not selling Rodgers, so I'd have to take a hit if I wanted to upgrade a midfielder. I suppose what I could do if I wanted to bench Rodgers is still sell Davis and then play a 4-3-3. But there aren't many defenders I desperately want to play ahead of Rodgers, even given the fixture against Liverpool. So yeah, it's one of those where my team doesn't look great. I've got Palmer against Arsenal, Rodgers against Liverpool. Lewis is a bit of a doubt. I'm starting a West Ham goalkeeper. I'm probably expecting a bit of a red arrow here. The key decision for me is captaincy between Salah and Haaland. And again, if you just own one of them, I'd say you just captain whoever you own. You could take a rogue punt on Cunha, I suppose. But just to confirm, like if you had Salah and Haaland in your team right now, who would you go for?
It's such a tough call, isn't it? I think I probably would edge towards Salah.
Okay. Is
Even
it the
though I
home
don't
fixture or the
it's just the
midfielder?
home. Like when in doubt, home is
Yep.
sort of my policy. But Brighton, they just they could play right into City's hands, and there could be a hell of a lot of goals there. So I don't mind the Haaland captain shout either. To be honest, are you going to go Haaland?
So at the moment, I'm like 51% Haaland, 49% Salah. It's obviously very difficult given Haaland's blanked in like 4 of the last 5 weeks. Salah's been scoring goals. We spoke about the bonus points, extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. Like a lot being at home, a lot leads me to think that Salah is probably the slightly better captaincy option. But if I'm looking at matchups, I prefer the matchup for Haaland playing against Brighton than I do Salah against Villa, although it kind of suits both of them. Like both of the Villa aren't going to sit back, Brighton aren't going to sit back. That's perfect for Salah and Haaland. So in an ideal world, they both go absolutely nuclear, but the one that I captain is the one that goes biggest. But I do think that's a difficult decision. So let us know in the comments if you had Salah or if you have Salah and Haaland, who would you be looking to captain? I don't think I want to go completely rogue, but if I was to, don't mind a cheeky little punt on Cunha. Cool. Right. That is it then, mate. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you very much for having me. Really
No
enjoyed
worries. And we'll do that psychology podcast at some point as well, where we can both geek out and nerd out about psychology
sounds
as well.
good. Sounds
Cool. If you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're watching or listening on audio, please make sure to rate 5-star as well. And I will catch you next week for a cheeky little special episode as well. We've got some really, really exciting guests lined up as well. So thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time.